sticking out. Both of them were whimpering. A smile spread all over the big marshal's face. "So that's what started the fight," he said. Walking over, he knelt down and started petting the pups. "They're fine-looking dogs," he said. "Where did you get them?" I told him I had ordered them from Kentucky. "What did they cost you?" he asked. $40, I said. He asked if my father had brought them for me. "No," I said. "I bought them myself." He asked me where I got the money. "I worked and saved it," I said. "It takes a long time to save $40, he said. "Yes," I said. "It took me 2 years." "2 years?" he exclaimed. I saw an outraged look come over the marshal's face. Reaching up, he pushed his hat back. He glanced up and down the street. I heard him mutter, "There's not one in that bunch with that kind of grit." Picking up my sack, I said, "Thanks for helping me out. I guess I'd better be heading for home." He asked where I lived. I said, "Up the river a way." "Well, we've got time for a bottle of pop before you go, haven't you?" I started to say no, but looking at his big friendly smile, I smiled back and said, "I guess I have." Walking into a general store, the marshal went over to a red large box and pulled back the lid. He asked what kind I wanted. I'd never had a bottle of pop in my life and didn't know what to say. Seeing my hesitation, he said, "The strawberry looks pretty good." I said that would be fine. The cool pop felt wonderful to my hot, dry throat. My dark little world had brightened up again. I had my pups and had found a wonderful friend. I knew that the stories I had heard about marshals weren't true. Never again would I be scared when I saw one. Back out on the street, I shook hands with the marshal, saying as I did, "If you're ever up in my part of the country, come over and see me. You can find our place by asking at my grandfather's store." "Store?" he asked. "Why, the only store upriver is about 30 miles from here." "Yes," I said. "That's my grandfather's place." He asked if I was afoot. "Yes," I said. "You won't make it tonight," he said. "Will you?" "No," I said. "I intend to camp out somewhere." I saw he was bothered. "I'll be all right," he said. "I'm not scared of the mountains." He looked at me and my pups. Taking off his hat, he scratched his head. Chuckling deep down his barrel-like chest, he said, "Yes, I guess you'll be all right. Well, goodbye and good luck. If you're ever in town again, look me up." From far down the street, I looked back. The marshal was standing where I had left him. He waved his hand. I waved back. On the outskirts of town, I stopped and picked up a can and my provisions. I hadn't gone far before I realized that I had undertaken a tough job. The sack became heavier and heavier. For a while, my pups cried and whimpered. They had long since pulled their heads back into the sack. I would peek in at them every once in a while. They were doing all right, curled up into 2 little round balls on my bundles. They were fast asleep. Deep in the heart of the Sparrowhawk Mountains, night overtook me. There in a cave with a stream close by, I put up for the night. Taking my pups and bundles from the gunny sack, I used it to gather leaves to make us a bed. My pups followed me on every trip, whimpering and crying, tumbling and falling over sticks and rocks. After the bed was made, I built a fire. In a can of water from the mountain stream, I boiled 3 eggs. Next, I boiled half of the remaining salt pork. Cutting the meat up in small pieces, I fed it to my pups. Each of us had a piece of candy for dessert. My pups enjoyed the candy. With their needle-sharp teeth, they gnawed and worried with it until it was melted away. While they were busy playing, I dragged up several large timbers and built a fire which would last for hours. In a short time, the cave grew warm and comfortable from the heat. The leaves were soft and felt good to my tired body and sore feet. As I lay stretched out, my pups crawled over me, all over me. I played with them. They would waddle up to the front of the cave, look at the fire, and come scampering back to roll and play in the soft leaves. I noticed the boy dog was much larger than the girl dog. He was a deeper red in color. His chest was broad and solid. His puppy muscles nodded and rippled under the velvety skin. He was different in every way. He would go closer to the fire. I saw right away he was bold and aggressive. Once he went around the fire and ventured out into the darkness, I waited to see if he would come back. He came wobbling to the mouth of the cave, but hesitated there. He made several attempts to come back, but the flames were leaping higher by the minute. The space between the fire and the wall of the cave was much hotter than when he had ventured out. Whimpering and crying, he kept trying to get around the fire. I said not a word, just watched. Puppy though he was, he did something which brought a smile to my face. Getting as close as he could to the side of the cave, he turned his rear to the fire. Hopping sideways, yipping at every jump, he made it through the heat and sailed into the pile of leaves. He had had enough. Curling in a ball close to me, he went to sleep. The girl pup was small and timid. Her legs and body were short. Her head was small and delicate. She must have been a runt in the litter. She didn't have to look twice to see that what she lacked in power, she made up in brains. She was a much smarter dog than the boy dog, more sure of herself, more cautious. I knew when the trail became tough, she would be the one to unravel it. I knew I had a wonderful combination. In my dogs, I had not only the power, but the brains along with it. I was a tired boy. My legs were stiff, and my feet sore and throbbing. My shoulders were red and raw from the weight of the sack. I discovered my pups in the leaves and moved my body as close to them as I could. I knew as night wore on, and the fire died down, the chill would come. Tired but happy, I fell asleep. Along in the silent hours of night, I was awakened. I opened my eyes but didn't move. I lay and listened, trying to figure out what it was that had aroused me. At first I thought one of my pups had awakened me by moving and whimpering. I discarded this thought, for I could see that they were both fast asleep. I decided it was my imagination working. My fire had burnt down, leaving only a glowing red body of coals. The cave was dark and silent. Chill from the night had crept in. I was on the point of getting up to rebuild my fire when I heard what had awakened me. At first I thought it was a woman screaming. I listened. My heart began to pound. I could feel the strain all over my body as nerves grew tighter and tighter. It came again, closer this time. The high pitch of the scream shattered the silence of the night, of the quiet night. The sound seemed to be all around us. It screamed its way into the cave and rang like a blacksmith's anvil against the rock walls. The blood froze in my veins. I was terrified. Although I had never heard one, I knew what it was. It was the scream of a mountain lion. The big cat screamed again. Leaves boiled and stirred where my pups were. In the reflection of the glowing coals, I could see that one was sitting up. It was the boy dog. A leaf had become entangled in the fuzzy hair of a floppy ear. The ear flicked. The leaf drooped. Again the hellish scream ran out over the mountains. Leaves flew as my pups left the bed. I jumped up and tried to call him back. Reaching the mouth of the cave, he stopped. Raising his small red head in the air, high in the air, he bawled his challenge to the devil cat. The bawl must have scared him as much as it had startled me. He came tearing back. The tiny hairs on his back were standing on end. My father had told me lions were scared of fire. I started throwing on more wood. I was glad I'd dragged up a good supply while making camp. Hearing a noise from the bed, I looked back. The girl pup, hearing the commotion, had gotten up and joined the boy dog. They were sitting side by side with their bodies stiff and rigid. Their beady little eyes bored into the darkness beyond the cave. The moist tips of their little black noses wiggled and twisted as if trying to catch a scent. What I saw in my pups gave me courage. My knees quit shaking and my heart stopped pounding. I figured the lion had scented my pups. The more I thought about anything harming them, the madder I got. I was ready to die for my dogs. Every time the big cat screamed, the boy dog would run into the mouth of the cave and bawl back at him. I started whooping and throwing rocks down the mountainside. hoping to scare the lion away. Through the long hours of the night, I kept this up. The lion prowled around us, screaming and growling, first on the right, then on the left, and above and below. In the wee hours of the morning, he gave up and left to stalk other parts of the mountains. I'm sure he thought he didn't stand a chance against 2 vicious hounds and a big hunter. To be continued.